Welcome along to episode 23. I'm Cam. I'm the host of the Lifting in Life podcast. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology. I'm a personal trainer and I also work in IT. Today I'm joined by Annie Nelson, who is a powerlifter with 2 British titles and has also competed at the World Championships twice. Not only that, she is also a powerlifting coach, so she coaches athletes who also compete in powerlifting. Now, I thought it would be a good idea to outline exactly what powerlifting is in case you're listening and you don't know anything about the sport. So, if you're a powerlifter, I hope I don't butcher this, but I'm just going to give a brief introduction into what powerlifting is. So, essentially, there's 3 main lifts: your squats, your bench, and your deadlifts. And in terms of a competition, it's divided into bodyweight categories, so you have to be under a certain body weight in order to compete in that category. And for the 3 lifts, each athlete gets 3 chances to lift the heaviest possible weight that they can for that lift within the guidance of the rules. I hope that makes sense. You'll find this episode valuable if you're considering getting into powerlifting, because Annie talks about what to look for specifically in getting a coach and just in general how to start powerlifting. As well as that, we discuss nutrition, being in a calorie surplus, and also the nuances of powerlifting like water cutting or improving certain aspects of the 3 lifts. I hope you enjoy this episode, and as always, feel free to like, comment, subscribe on the platform that you're listening to this on. But I'm ready to roll if you are. We're live now.
Me too.
Cool. Okay, now Annie, thank you so much for joining me today. Obviously, we're going to delve into some powerlifting. Be kind of funny if we chatted about anything else, I guess.
Yeah.
But where I want to start off, obviously being a British champion, someone who's competed at the World Champs, and has been competing for a few years, and you're also a coach. I wanted to start off quite big and broad and just ask you, what does the term strength mean to you? Obviously, being a powerlifter, you need to be strong, lift heavy weights, but is there more to that word strength than just being physically strong?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think probably the biggest thing for me is the strength kind of shown me time and time again, like proving myself wrong that I can do things that I never once thought was possible. And like even though that's just a weight on the bar, like for some people it's not that deep. But for me it shows me like you're so much more capable of things than what you think. And I'm able to transfer that over to everyday life as well. And I have heard some of my own lifters that I coach say similar things. Like it really helps them with confidence in everyday life and mental health wise, it is amazing. It's really helped me through a lot of horrible times. So yeah, that's what I would say strength means to me.
Yeah, it's a good point you raise. I've been listening to some people who, because I'm a big believer, like from my personal training experience, that training physically and improving yourself physically, whether that's aesthetics or strength or fitness, I really feel like that's a transferable thing to other parts of your life, whether it be relationships, your work, whatever. It teaches you how to persevere
Yeah.
through other things as well. But I've heard people say the opposite. They're like, nah, there's no transferable learnings between lifting weights
Really?
and yeah, between lifting weights and then stuff outside of the gym. So how do you think specifically it's transferred into other areas of your life?
I think just like well, on one side of it, I think feeling physically strong makes you feel more kind of in control of everyday life, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Like knowing that you can, or it's probably sounds silly, but knowing that you can like lift a certain amount of weight. I don't know. I just think it makes you feel more powerful as a person.
It's like, yeah, empowering, I feel.
Yeah,
And it's like it gives you
definitely,
a sense of confidence too, I think.
definitely. And like, I don't want this to think I'm discounting males at all because it's just as important for them. But I think it's really empowering, especially for females as well, like because we're often told we shouldn't be doing that sort of thing, and like realizing that you can lift just as much as these men is very empowering.
Mm. Is there any specific times in your life where you've been going through a lot outside of the gym and then you lifting weights and doing this stuff in the sport that you do has been the sort of catalyst for you being able to get through that stuff outside of
Yeah,
the gym?
massively. Like the gym and training for me is a total like I go into this different headspace where I don't think about anything else. It's just my training, and I find that's been really great. And way at the start when I first picked it up, I was really depressed. I was on antidepressants. My anxiety was really bad. I didn't actually know like if I was going to get through it, to be honest. But I just picked up powerlifting, and for some reason, it made me feel amazing about myself, and it gave me a focus. And like, I dread to think what would happen if I hadn't started that.
Mm. Well, it sounds like you're going through a lot at
Yeah.
that time. How long since you when you started powerlifting, how soon did you see the positive impacts that it would have on your life? Because it sounds like you were going through a very tough time.
Yeah, so I think I started powerlifting when I literally just turned 21, and I'm 26 now. And I trained for like 6 months before I did my first comp, something like that. And then basically like I remember being in a really bad place for quite a while, and I didn't quite realize it until I looked back that it actually went back to probably high school. And then it was pretty quick, to be honest. Like I honestly think like within a couple of months I was like, whoa, like I've got a whole new lease of life here. And I think it helped that I was good at it as well. But it just
Yeah.
made me feel good about myself and made me realize that um here's a sport that you're really good at. Like you could do well at this, rather than just kind of plodding along with my athletics thinking, oh, I'm not very good at this, and life is crap right now. Like it was a totally different shift.
Yeah, I'd be personally interested in some studies. I'm sure they've probably been conducted, studies being conducted on that very thing because it'd be intriguing to understand what part of that improved your mental health. Was it the, maybe you could answer, but was it the working towards a specific goal? Was it the, like the routine and the consistency that it gave you? Was it the fact that you were moving your body in a way at a high intensity that it just wasn't getting before? What do you think were the main elements? It's probably all the above, but what do you think were the main elements that helped improve your mental state?
I honestly think it's slightly different from that, because like for some people it might be that. But for me, I've always grown up in competitive sports, so like I've always been training in a routine. I've always stuck to it. Like I would never, I would occasionally miss a training session, maybe like once a year or something like that. I'd always go. I'd always be in my routine. I'd always be moving and exercising, and working towards a competitive goal. So like that never changed for me. But I think what did change was like I was doing athletics before, right, and it's quite hard to gauge how you're improving compared to powerlifting, because even when it's not like a squat, bench, or deadlift and it's an accessory and you're up in weight, like you know you're
It's
getting,
very objective.
yeah,
Yeah.
very objective.
Mm.
So I think knowing and seeing that I was improving and getting physically stronger was really, really helpful for me.
Mm. Yeah, that's interesting actually that you were competing already before it because maybe my assumption was that you hadn't been and then you found a physical thing, but actually having already been competing, it seems like it was the, like you say, the thing you were competing in that helped you because it was a very objective sport where, sorry, whereas like something like bodybuilding is almost the exact opposite because it can be so subjective.
100%.
Mm. Now, to sort of build a bit of a picture, obviously, because you're a coach, so I'm keen to pick your brain on this too. If I was, say, I don't know, maybe a 22-year-old female, I go to the gym a little bit, but I'm really wanting to compete and get into powerlifting, what would the first few steps for me be to get into the sport?
So first thing I would say to anyone is get a coach. It's very, very hard to do it without a coach. A lot of people think, I do squat, bench, and deadlift in the gym. How much more different can it be? You need a coach,
Yeah.
like especially at the start. I know some lifters that self-coach. I have no idea how they do it, but they tend to be like more advanced. Like you don't normally see beginner to intermediate lifters without a coach, and I think that's really important. Um, Regarding that, I would say try and find a coach that, like, speak to lots of different coaches and see, ideally go on a call with them if they offer that and speak with them and see how you gel together because some
What kind
people
of
just
questions would I ask the coach if I was new to the world of powerlifting? What would be some green flags and red flags that I would look for?
like in
And
a coach.
so, yeah, or and what questions do I ask if I'm completely new to powerlifting and I jump on a call with you right now? I'm a client, you're my potential coach. What are some questions I should ask you to decipher whether or not you're a good coach?
This is a good question. This is like very, very wide and broad. Um, but I think I would first of all ask about the communication aspect, like what can I expect? Like when am I going to hear from you? When am I going to get my programming and like try and work out how reliable that is? If you can speak to current or ex clients, then great, because they're going to tell you straight. Because obviously a coach can say whatever they want.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah, that's a really big thing because if you aren't hearing back from your coach when they say they're going to message you back or give you feedback, or you're not getting your programming on time, like that is a huge red flag. Like, I mean, you're paying for a service, you need to get the service, and it affects you massively as an athlete. Um, so that is a big thing. What else would I say? I would ask just like, what do you expect from me as an athlete as well? Um, and I think like just generally speaking to a coach, what you want to watch out for is like a coach that makes it about them and not about the lifter.
yeah. Back in
Um,
my day when I competed at World
yes,
Champs, I
I've
deadlifted
done this. I've done
300.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, fair enough if you're asking about the coach's personal things. Like, when I go on a consultation call with someone, if they ask me about my own things, or if they say, I've got my first international coming up and I think you might be a good coach for me because you've been there and done it yourself, I'll talk to them a bit about that and how I could possibly use my experiences to help them. But it's when the coaches are constantly like, well, I've done this, so I'm therefore a good coach. It's like, well, no. How many different kinds of lifters at different levels have you coached, and how have you been able to develop or help them? Like whether it's physically, mentally, both. Because mental development is just as important as physical when you're trying to be in a sport like powerlifting that is, the long game.
Would you say that their reputation as an athlete when they competed or when they are currently competing is a good sign of whether or not they're a good coach? You know, their ability to compete as an athlete?
I think like that's a bit of a two-sided thing. So like first thing I'd say is just being a good lifter doesn't mean you're a good coach. But at the same time, if you can do both well, they work so well together because like there's so many times that I've been able to relate like so closely with my clients. Like it's actually unusual that I have one of them come to me with an issue and I've not been there myself. So like empathy wise, it's really good and I can chat to them a bit about like how I dealt with it and how I've dealt with possibly other clients who have gone through the same thing. Because I know that some coaches um have never competed themselves and I just don't understand like how can you possibly put yourself in that person's shoes when you've never done it
If you
yourself.
haven't done the thing, that's the exact same thing in the world of bodybuilding. How
Yeah,
do you know what your athlete is going through? You know, if they're having to do something extreme like a water cut or something like that, how do you know what they're going through if
yeah.
you haven't walked the walk
Hmm.
yourself?
Or even like knowing how hard it is to peak and
Mm.
like have these heavy weights on your back session in session out, like it's just very hard to understand. And like even some people in the gym, like I've got friends in the gym that don't compete in powerlifting but they really like doing squat, bench, deadlift powerlifting style training, but they still will not 100% understand what it's like to fully do it competitively.
And if I'm going back again, if I'm this 22-year-old female keen to get into it, first piece of advice is to get a coach. What if I say to you, but Annie, I can't afford a coach, but I want to get into powerlifting, and maybe I just want to try it out for 8 weeks or 10 weeks to see if I'm even any good at this thing
Yeah.
before I invest in a coach. What things should I do to start? Maybe in terms of my potential split, sets and reps and exercises. Obviously, caveat it with it's going to be different for everyone. Yep. But what would be some good points to start with?
So you're right, like it definitely would be different for everyone, and it depends on how long this female had been training for and what kind of thing she does already. So like when I get a new client coming on, especially one who's, pretty new to powerlifting, I always ask how many, like what their frequency is like just now over their squat, bench, deadlift, and how much time they spend on their accessories, stuff like that. And then you slowly usually have to build it up from there. Um, but the first thing I would ask is like how many times do you squat, bench, and deadlift in a week? And then say she maybe said, I do them all once a week. I would say, right, well, why don't you try keeping your deadlift once a week for now, squat twice, bench twice, and then come back to me in however many weeks, let me know how things are, how you're adapting, and then, I would try and it's very difficult to say when you've not got that communication with that person, but I'm always very keen to get anyone involved. So even if I couldn't be their coach, I'd always be open to have someone messaging me being like, look, I'm thinking of doing this style of training. Do you think that makes sense? I'd be like, yeah. Like, I'm not going to write a whole program for them for nothing, but I'd be happy to lend an ear and give them I've done that before, like giving people a couple of pointers where they've messaged me their program and said, what do you think of this? This is people I know, by the way.
Not
Not
just
just
a
strangers.
random.
Yeah,
Yep.
and then I've said like, this is pretty good, but I'd maybe tweak this little bit here. Here's my reasons, sort of thing. You can always speak to so many people. This is the thing, like especially lifters high up in the sport and coaches high up, like or even just coaches in general. They want people to get involved and do well. So, like if somebody's gatekeeping stuff, is you question their intentions a bit.
Yeah, it does feel like a sport where everyone sort of encourages everyone. I suppose the format of it sort of promotes that as well. But back to so the first thing there would be if they have been training, like you said, would be increasing the frequency. Where do you stand with it in terms of their technique? What if they're doing each lift 3 times a week, but they're doing them very poorly? Would you still
Yeah.
then encourage them to increase the frequency, or would you say keep doing it once a week, but improve on these things because your back looks like you're a dog taking a poop when you're doing a
Yeah.
deadlift?
Again, I think there's a very fine line with that. Like it depends how bad it is.
Yeah,
Because on one side, you wouldn't want to increase the frequency when something's really bad,
yeah,
because you obviously don't want to, promote injury or niggles. However, on the other side, increasing frequency is going to give them more exposure to it and more practice, and that's when they're going to get better. So it would totally depend on like how that person lifted. If you can, like, sometimes a good thing to do, some coaches do like a technique review. So like you don't need to pay like a monthly fee or whatever. You can maybe do it for cheaper, send them a bunch of videos, and then they'll send you some technique analysis back. That would be a cheaper option, with some coaches that do offer that.
yeah. That's really good advice. I didn't know they did that. That's good.
Some people do, yeah.
The reason I asked that is because when I started with a bodybuilding coach quite a few years ago, when I was competing, I said, "Oh, I need to grow my legs. Like, would you say I should increase the frequency from once to twice a week?" And his advice was just, let's see if we can get one leg day right before we increase it to 2 leg days, which
Yeah,
obviously different sports, but like you say, the more reps you do, the higher the chance of you getting better because as long as the reps are improving, you're not doing the technique poor every single time.
yeah.
But if
And
you're focusing on improving,
another thing like just popped into my head there as well is like chat to loads of powerlifters in your gym if you can, and get technique advice from them, because people are often really willing to help. So stuff like that would be good. But yeah, like increasing or not increasing frequency is a very, very subjective thing.
yeah, absolutely. And that's probably best done under the eyes of a good coach
Yeah.
because, like you said, if you're doing it poorly and you go from doing 20 reps poorly to 40 reps poorly,
Yeah,
it's not really advantageous.
exactly.
All right. Now, to bring it back to you as an athlete, you obviously just competed at Worlds. Um, I would really keen to sort of zoom in on that a little bit, and maybe the first part of it that I'd be interested in is how do you deal with the pressure of such a big event? Obviously, it's like, would you say it's the most prestigious or maybe the second most prestigious competition in powerlifting in the world? So, how do you deal with the pressure that comes along with an event like
So I think the first time I was going to Worlds last year, I was like very kind of, what am I doing here?
that? Hmm.
Like all of these famous lifters that are like all over Instagram were suddenly introducing themselves to me, and I was having to try and play it cool.
It's like a bit of imposter syndrome, sort of.
Yeah, I was like, what the hell am I doing here? But um, I've always kind of struggled with that, but like it's getting much better. Like this time, I was like, no, I've properly earned my spot here, um, and it gets better over time. But I think like the biggest thing that's helped that is the GB team. Like they've been so good. Like it's such a supportive group. There's 8 women and 8 men, and all the coaches are great as well. And like we had a group chat before we went, and like it was, I think it started off being like just announcements from the head coach, like very strict sort of thing, and then we all ended up chatting and like taking the mick out of each other and stuff, and like we all know each other already, but like having that throughout your peaking and things like that was like you're not in this alone. You've got 15 other people here doing the same thing, and they're all rooting for you.
It's like the
And when you
community aspect of it.
100%, and when you like, not only have we all got like a really nice circle of people backing us back home, but when we're over there, everyone always makes an effort to go and cheer you on when you're on the platform. Like, it doesn't matter if they know you or not. If you're Team GB, they're there, and that made a huge difference.
That's epic. That's
Yeah,
such a supportive little community. So
it is.
what was the difference between last year and this year and you feeling like you were meant to be there? Is it like a sense of you kind of proved yourself last year, or is it sort of like I've been here, I've done it, so you feel a little bit more comfortable? What made it different this time around?
So last year I had probably the worst competition of my whole life.
Nice.
Yeah, but like I always find when I have a comp that doesn't go quite how I want it to go, I always learn a lot from it,
Mm,
um, and it develops me as a lifter. So like I'm not happy with my performance just past, but I know that it's going to make me better. Um, but I think like what's changed is like I did a lot of work with a sports psychologist before and after that. Her name's Amelia Potter on Instagram. Pot stinks. So she really helped me work through a lot of imposter syndrome that I had, and kind of reminded me why I've earned my spot, and like helping me own my own successes, because I was always just like, saying, oh, it's because either these people didn't do as well, so I got put in the team or whatever, or it's because my coach is so like doing all this work for me and it's not me, if that makes sense.
yeah.
And it's a very two-sided thing, obviously. So like I had to try and like work through a point where I was realizing that it was actually because of me that I was there and it wasn't a fluke.
It's like
um,
owning your successes.
Yeah. And like the people that you meet over there and stuff is amazing. So I think like the fact that I knew a lot more people this time was really nice, and I was looking forward to seeing them rather than going in and being like, right, I know the GB team and that's it.
Hmm. You're one of the first athletes I've talked to who's actually gone to a sports psychologist. So I've got my bachelor's degree in psychology, so
Really?
yeah, I'm quite interested in it. And my partner Chloe, she's a professional bikini athlete, and she's gone to a sports psychologist. So what specifically did you do with the sports psychologist? Maybe like how many sessions I'd be interested in, but also like what specific things did you do with her that helped you be able to own your successes like that?
So we had a few sessions over video call and stuff. Like we worked together for quite a few months. I would need to check how long it was. Um, and it was just really good to like talk through things. Like I would say things that she would then ask me questions on, and then I would realize like, oh, that's why I think like that. like one example of that would be she was asking me about my athletics background, and I said like I would kind of go into I wouldn't go into a race thinking negatively, but I would kind of think, right, I'm probably going to be like this is when it was like national level. I wasn't that great, if I'm being honest. Like I was fast compared to the average female, but that was it.
Yeah.
If I was going into like Scottish Championship race or something, I would have it in my head like, right, you're probably going to be mid pack to maybe last. I don't know, mid to last, somewhere there. You're not
Were you being realistic or negative towards yourself?
just realistic. Like when it was like regional level, I wasn't too bad, but when it got higher than that, I was struggling. So like I knew I wasn't going to podium, and she was kind of asking me questions like, "Do you think because you've kind of gone so quickly from being a beginner powerlifter to actually like winning your first British within the space of like, oh, I would need to check how long, a short amount of time. Do you think that's maybe why you're struggling with this?" I was like, do you know what? Actually, I think you're right. Like, I'm just not used to being at the top, and I feel like it's a fluke. Um,
Yeah, that's an interesting
yeah,
observation. It's based on your previous sport where you didn't do well,
yeah,
in quotes, didn't do well, to a sport where you're excelling. You could see how your imposter syndrome would come about because I was
yeah,
like, well, my experience with sport is to not do that great on a big stage, and then there
yeah.
you were winning.
Like I've just always been like quite athletic, but average. Um, yeah, like my school friends would probably say different, but when I was comparing myself to the others that were doing sports, I wasn't amazing. And then the fact that people were telling me, yeah, you're going to be in the GB team within like this amount of time and stuff, I was like, what is going on? Like, I was like, how on earth have I got here? But like over time, that's really started to fade away, and I've realised that I am actually good at this, and it's okay to feel like that and say that.
Mm. Did she get you to do any like affirmation kind of work or anything like that?
Yeah. So after each comp, I would do like a sort of review where I'd type some stuff up on my laptop. I'd answer all the questions that she was asking me, and it was like I can't remember the exact questions, but it was like in detail, like properly breaking everything down, and like realizing all these things and learning these things, and like I would send that back to her, and then we'd have a call and we'd chat about it all, and that really helped.
Yeah, it's quite a powerful thing that I learnt about that in psychology, and the term that was used was called savoring. And
Mm,
it's like after an event or a thing or an experience, if you, it could even just be talking about it, reviewing it through a conversation, but writing it down is that it enhances your ability to hang on to those learnings or what happened in that experience rather than doing the thing, okay, I did great, I didn't do great, and then just moving on. But
yeah,
if you have that ability, especially if it's specific questions, not how was it?
yeah,
It's like what specifically went well with your deadlift or something like
yeah.
that, then I'm sure for you it helped you hang on to those learnings for a longer period of time.
Definitely, yeah. And it also helped that she was really lovely, and I felt like I was in such a safe space when I was speaking. So yeah,
Mm, yeah. Um, Another thing when it comes to you and your competing, I'm always interested in athletes and their nutrition. So when it comes to your powerlifting, how important would you say nutrition is, both probably splitting it into two parts when you're specifically competing, maybe for that weekend or that day that you're competing, and then also outside of that time as well?
yeah. So I think like when you're competing, it obviously depends on whether you need to try and make weight or not. I always do, but outside of that, it's so much more important than what people think. Like people think it's just all training, but like if you can nail your nutrition as well, like you're coming in like all guns blazing. It's such a huge like it's like a cheat code. People are lazy with it. I see it all the time. They almost eat like children. Like it's like they'll get their protein in, but there's no micronutrients or any of
No,
that.
chicken and rice.
Yeah, or they drink like I don't know, not even a liter a day or something like that. And it's all these things that help you recover and repair all your muscles and like just be a healthier human as
Yeah.
well. So it is massively important. I've been working with a nutrition coach for just over a year now. Jane Jones is her name. She's been massively helpful, and like having that accountability is really useful as well.
So how strict is your plan day to day?
Not strict at all. It's just kind of like basically we started off tracking like my macros and my fiber intake and things like that, and my hydration levels. I did that for a long time, and then it was like earlier this year. I said to her like, Jane, I'm really struggling. Like last week, I didn't track a single day fully, and like my body image right now is really bad. Said like I'm not gonna lie, I'm at like a pretty low point here. I just want to be honest with you. Like sorry that I've not tracked anything. And she was like, right, first of all, never say sorry for that. I'm really glad you told me. And we had a bit of a back and forth, and she was like, what I want you to do just now is step away from tracking anything and just take a picture of everything you eat and timestamp it and then send me it and then let me know what time you've trained. Um, and that was like a big game changer for me. Like all of a sudden I wasn't like craving foods and feeling restricted. Like I had like a bit of food freedom there.
It's such a
But
catch
uh,
22 with a specific plan like that. Like,
yeah,
yeah, it might get you to the goal quicker, arguably, but if that's at the expense of your mental health, then it's almost counterintuitive to the goal.
exactly. Yeah. I had a bit of a break from that, and then the week before Worlds just passed, I was tracking again because we need to kind of track your macro intake, like your split of macros, because often you need to bring your carbs down and bring your fats and your proteins up to help you lose a little bit of water weight, bring fiber down, things like that. I went back to tracking for a week, and I was actually like, this is okay. So I've started tracking this week again, just after having a bit of a break after Worlds, just eating and drinking, doing all these nice things. I've started tracking again, and I feel okay about it. But I know that that was my choice, and I know that Jane will be happy for me to step away from that if I ever need to. But um, I think I'll be all right with it this time.
That's such an important learning for you as an athlete, and I'm sure that helps you with your athletes too, in terms of you being a coach as well.
Yeah.
But one important thing you touched on there, which I'd be interested to elaborate on more, was micronutrients.
Mm,
It's easy, like you say, to eat your chicken and rice and some avocado or peanut butter or something.
yeah.
So, what are some key micronutrients you make sure to include in your intake?
So I wouldn't like say there's anything specifically that you should be having, but if you can generally make your plate as colourful as you can, then great. Like if you can get greens, red vegetables, like as many colours as you can, then great. Like
Yeah,
I wouldn't say don't overcomplicate it. Just try and make a colourful plate.
that's very sound advice. We
Yeah.
me and my partner Chloe, we started getting the odd box, which is here
Mhm.
in the UK, and it's like £15 a week or something.
Mhm.
And each week on a Thursday night, a box gets dropped off with a random selection of fruit and veggies.
Nice.
And we found that has been a really good way of getting variation in. Because I don't know what it's like for
Yeah.
you, but when you go to the supermarket and like, yeah, I know I need to get a good variation of fruit and veggies, but it's almost like you have ones that you just default to every time, and then you're
Yeah.
like, I don't know what to get. So, what's your approach to that? Do you just go and shadowgun, or do you have like some recipes in mind?
So, first of all, my boyfriend does most of the cooking. I will
Nice.
fully admit that. And he's an athlete. Like that's what he does for a living. So it's good. Like I can always rely on whatever he's making. It's good for both of us.
Yeah,
But like that odd box, I might actually give that a go. I don't know if they have that up in Scotland, but I'm gonna have a look.
yeah, I don't know.
But like usually I get a few fresh things, but like I also have like a lot of stock in the freezer, so I can just like quickly.
Super easy.
Yeah, like last night I had like broccoli and cauliflower all straight in the microwave, and it
Yeah.
like I know that sounds really lazy, but you're still getting your vegetables in.
And it's better than nothing, right? If you
Yeah,
can
and
get
it's cheaper
something
too.
in. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But we've been doing the odd box for maybe 4 weeks or something now. And we've been enjoying it, and it's something different, and they're in season too, which is
Mm,
another benefit of it. Maybe I should get them to sponsor the podcast. No?
yeah, you should.
So-
I'm definitely gonna have a look at it now.
yeah, yeah, have a look. But now in terms of you being an athlete and also a coach, from my experience as a personal trainer, so I got into personal training because I was like, oh, I love fitness and I love going to the gym for myself. And then a learning after a while of being an in-person personal trainer is that it can actually take the passion away from it. So
Mm.
how do you balance turning your passion into a profession like that?
So I think first of all it helps I am like completely utterly obsessed with a sport and I'll happily talk about
It
it
does help.
for hours. Like it's not like I just like it. Like I revolve my entire life around it. So like if someone asks me about it, I'm like I'll talk to anyone
Let's
about
go.
it.
Yeah.
Like I'm like ask me about powerlifting. But yeah, like I think you've got to make boundaries somehow as well. Like it can't be your be all and end all. Like you've also got to find time where you switch off and don't think about things like that. But I do find that being a coach and a lifter myself, they both do complement each other quite well.
Is that in terms of the experience crossover, or is it sort of not having the context switch, or how do you think they benefit each other?
I think like one way, like I said earlier, about how I'm usually able to relate to my clients quite closely, whatever they come to me with. And then on the other hand, I often learn from them as well. So like I can put instead of freaking out about something and having my athlete brain on, I can then be like, right, if you were coaching yourself right now, like what would you tell yourself?
That's
Sort of thing.
good. You almost
Yeah.
become a self coach in the moments when it's a bit tougher.
Yeah. And like I often my coach is very collaborative, which I'm lucky with, but he will often bounce some ideas off each other and I'll be like, right, hey, I'm thinking about this for this reason, like what do you think? Like at the end of the day I'm going to trust your decision, but this is my thoughts and like we're quite good at bouncing ideas off each other.
Mhm. And before you came a coach, what were you doing professionally?
So I was working in an office doing German translation and German customer service.
So you speak German fluently then?
Yeah, I went to uni to do German and Spanish translating and interpreting.
Wow. And what was that transition? Because those are very different things, being a
I know,
translator to a powerlifting coach.
I
What was
know.
that like? I'm just thinking about maybe there's people listening right now who are powerlifters, and maybe they're considering stepping into the coaching realm, but are also working a 9 to 5. How did you handle that transition?
So first of all, what I did was like my shifts were a little bit weird. Like they were 9 till 5 or 5:30, and then lockdown happened and everything kind of got switched around. So I would have like maybe 3 days a week where I was 9 till 5:30, and then 2 days a week where I think I was 11:30 till 8. So what I'd do is I'd have like I think I started off on 2 days a week where I'd have like 2 mornings a week on my 11:30 till 8 shifts. I would go in to the gym that I coached at the time and do like two personal training sessions or whatever. Like I started off being a PT before I went into powerlifting coaching, and it would just be people who wanted to get stronger. So it was like gentle powerlifting.
Yeah.
Um, and then I thought like, right, I'm going to need to go part time here because I'm getting quite busy. And the clients that I did have were staying as well, and I was getting good feedback from them. And I was like, right, okay. And I thought, right, I'm going to go part time. So I spoke to my managers about it, and there was a bit of a back and forth, but it wasn't as simple as I wanted it to be, which is completely fair.
Yeah.
And then I was speaking to my boyfriend about it. Like for context, we have got a mortgage together. Like it's
Some
quite,
financial commitments.
yeah. And yeah, he was like, Annie, you're never gonna know how it's gonna go until you like go all in. He's like, if anything happens, I've got your back. Like, I'll pay the bills. Like, just do it. And I was like, right, okay. So I just left my job and went full time, which
Whoa.
is pretty wild, I know. But like,
Yeah.
I had thankfully had that safety net there that I luckily didn't need to use.
Hmm.
I don't know how I struck so lucky, but I just got so busy so quickly, and people stayed. And I'm so grateful for that. Like I've still got clients now that I had at the very start.
Oh, that's so cool. And you form such a close relationship, right? After
Yeah.
some time, you're basically just friends and you happen to be
Oh
taking
yeah.
them through a training session.
Yeah. Like some of them, I only coach online now, but like some of them, I'm like, please can we meet for a coffee because I've not seen you in
Yeah,
so
yeah,
long. And
yeah.
they are a friend as well, and obviously there's boundaries there, but it's lovely when you're close with your clients rather than just being like, do this, do that.
Absolutely. And what were some of your strategies on getting those clients. We're almost going into a business advice kind of conversation now, but it sounds like when you quit your job, you obviously were a successful personal trainer. So how did you do that? Because personal training isn't an easy thing to do in terms of getting the sales, because often, I don't know what your experience was like, but you're kind of really interested in, like, you love the thing that you're doing, but sometimes selling your service can be quite difficult. So how
Yeah.
did you navigate that?
So like first of all, I know that I'm very privileged in the fact that people looked at what I'd done as an athlete and thought I want to be coached by someone who's done that because I think that's cool.
Yep.
And I'm not naive to the fact that that was a big point there. But then I feel like I have to prove myself by showing what I can do as a coach, not just as a lifter. Um, and social media has been a massive thing for that. Like now, I'm terrible at posting on my business account, but at the start, I was like posting all day, every day, like tagging my clients if they wanted to repost it, they could. Didn't really matter if they did or not, but like as long as I was active on there and showing people what I was doing day in day out, really did help.
And it's about, like you say, it makes sense that people come to you for your resume, right? It's like, well, this person obviously knows how to do the thing,
Hmm.
therefore there's a higher chance of them being able to teach me to do the thing. But you
Yeah,
having the confidence to then take videos or photos of their progress and then be able to post it up, was that,
yeah,
would you say, the main sort of catalyst of growing your business from there?
yeah. And I definitely think word of mouth as well. Like the clients that I did bring on, I was very lucky that they were all lovely people and I got on so well with them. So like they would feel like their training time with me was a safe space and they could like have a almost a bit of a counselling session at some points.
Yeah.
And you know, like when you give somebody that sort of space and time, then they talk about you in a nice way and other people hear about you. So yeah.
That is one big component of personal training that often people aren't prepared for, right? Is that it's not just taking them through 3 sets of 12 and a leg extension. You're there with them for half an hour or an hour, and a lot of that time is spent resting in between sets.
Yeah.
And they do end up confiding in you. So, did you find that aspect of it okay? It wasn't too much?
Yeah, do you know, I found it okay. Like I know a lot of people are like, Jesus, you're putting like all your trauma on me here, but like I actually found it quite like what's the word? Quite meaningful that someone felt like they were in a safe enough space to tell me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um and yeah, it just meant quite a lot actually, and I would always lend an ear to someone that was needing it.
Did you find that that helped you sort of work through anything that you were going through? Because at least for me, I was also really young, like you, like early 20s when I started personal training, and then you're training someone who's maybe 50 or even older, who is going through so many things that you can't relate to.
Mm.
But did you find that training people like that, from what I assume would have been quite a wide range of people that you've trained, have you got a lot of learnings from them also, as well as them obviously learning from you?
Yeah, I would say so. Like it feels like a while ago now that I was doing the face to face stuff, but it really wasn't. And just hearing about like different parts of different people's lives and the backgrounds they've come from. It's always interesting and always gives you a new perspective.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I found that I learned a lot of different things, even about, the corporate world or anything like that. Because when you go from straight to uni then into personal training, it's just something that you can't relate to at all.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of pulling it back to you again as an athlete, right now, what are some of the main things that you're working on to improve and come back stronger for your next competition?
So right now, um, the biggest couple of issues for me is my bench press is down, and we're trying to work out why. I think it could be body weight related because I've dropped weight a little bit. Um, so what I'm gonna do just now is over the next 8 weeks, I'm doing like a very gentle surplus. Um, which is going to be very closely monitored because every time I've put on weight, it's been accidental and it's given me like a negative view of it.
Oh,
So I'm
so
doing
a calorie surplus. I thought you were talking about
yeah,
your training for a second. Yeah, so yeah,
yeah,
gotcha.
sorry, yeah. So I'm doing that very gently to try and help me put on the muscle that I need, and then we're going to strip it back. So I'm going to do a little bit of a recomp. Basically, at Worlds I noticed that my upper body was a lot smaller than some of the girls there. So to get like obviously a bigger muscle has the potential to be a stronger muscle. So if I can use this like off season to do that, then great, because usually I'm prepping and can't like really go through a volume or hypertrophy phase.
I was
But
about
I
to
can now.
ask, so if you're wanting to put on muscle, you must change your sets and reps around as well?
Yeah, to an extent. Like I've always done volume stuff on my accessories, but now I've got it on everything. So yeah, like training a bigger range of motion and things like that as well. But um, yeah, that's my bench, and then my deadlift is I keep dropping deadlifts. That's my grip.
Oh,
Um,
right.
so I'm kind of like, is it my grip or is it my positioning off the floor that's making the bar roll out my hand, or is it both? So I'm trying to work on both of them right now with my coach and try and work out where it's going wrong. I've been trialing hook grip this week and it feels horrible,
How's your
but
thumbs?
yeah, but like this is like this probably sounds way too far, but I'm like nothing is sorer than the pain of dropping a deadlift on the platform.
That's true.
So I'm trying to strike a balance with things and work out what I can do.
Which hand specifically? Is there one that lets go first?
It's my right hand, which is my overhand because I do mixed grip.
Hmm. Oh, that's interesting. I don't
It
know
just
enough
rolls
about.
out like when I start to lock it out and the bar goes over my quad, it then starts to roll out and you see it like I'm like this and then it starts to go like that.
And that feeling, you can just feel it just slowly rolling out of your hands.
Yeah, there's a
And
picture of me at Worlds with 215 in my hands and I'm literally smiling and it was just before I dropped
oh
it.
man. And what
Yeah.
about your squats? If we got to go through each one, is there something specifically with your squats that you want to work on?
Squats are loyal.
Yeah.
That's my favorite. Like squats are going well right now. Like I mean, in March, I squatted a British record of 186 on the platform, and it was a grind. And then, like we've changed a couple of things on like technique. I've changed the footwear that I wear, and then like programming wise, we've changed a few bits as well. Like just basically brought the intensity up a bit. And then yeah, like that's just been going so well because at Worlds I squatted 190 and it was actually quite easy. Like I had like another 7.5 in me, according to my coach, and I believe him. So it's like that's in a short period of time. So whatever I'm doing with my squat is working, and I'm going to keep it that way. But it's the other two that I need to fix.
Yeah. Well, at least one of them is solid there. That's a
Yeah,
lot of weight, man.
I know. I don't know.
190.
Like sometimes I forget that like I couldn't even deadlift that at one point. So
That's epic. Now, in terms of pulling it back to your bench press and then going into a calorie surplus, how do you initiate a calorie surplus and what does that look like for you? Is there a particular thing? Like, do you increase your carbs only or like how do you navigate through a calorie surplus?
I think it'll be pretty even spread, you know. I think this week I'm just tracking, and then I'm gonna let my nutritionist know like what I've been having because I haven't been tracking for the past couple of weeks. So if I let her know how it is and let her know my average weight, then we can go from there. But I think it's gonna be something gentle, like I don't know, maybe like a 200 calorie surplus or something like that. Give me that extra fuel, and like we'll probably adjust it week on week. Because I get weekly or bi-weekly check-ins, so she'll let me know if she thinks I should go up a little bit, down a little bit, and she'll also check in with my mental state as well. So I think like this is totally new for me, so I think we're just going to see how I go because usually I'm on like way lower calories than I should be for the amount of muscle that I have. I think that comes from the extreme dieting when I was in a lower weight class, but we're hopefully going to bring it back up and help me feel super fueled.
Because it is an interesting one with the metabolism, right? That's why if you have a client who needs to go in a deficit or a surplus and they say, how many calories should I be eating? Like, I don't know. Like, at least like the strategy that I would take is I would get a indication of what they're currently consuming
Yeah.
and then build it off there. And
Yeah.
then now in terms of your surplus, because there's this thing where I'd almost go so far as to saying it's like a myth kind of thing. When people were cutting or in a surplus, there's a myth that your rep ranges and your training should also change. You know, oh, I'm cutting now, so I should do high reps. like where do you stand with that in terms of your training? Does it change at all when you go into a surplus? Obviously, you mentioned about the upper body hypertrophy, which is kind of different to the surplus, but surplus or in a deficit, does your training differ?
I think it depends, like um powerlifting perspective wise, it depends where you are in your comp calendar. Like can you afford to change that? Probably not. Um, and it depends like why are you in a surplus? Why are you in a deficit? Like, do you really need to be in a deficit right now? Generally speaking, the surplus helps strength athletes, whether it's gentle or not. But yeah, basically when I'm in going into the surplus now, I think the extra reps that I'm doing and the extra volume that I'm doing, those two are going to go hand in hand, really.
Yeah, and I don't know, the world of powerlifting has always kind of intrigued me a little bit in terms of the surplus and cutting side of it. What is your approach in terms of your body weight? Because I know there's some people who say they compete at 86 and they just always hover around 86, but then there might be people in that category who go up to 90 kilos or even more and then cut down for a show. What is your strategy when it comes to your body composition throughout the year?
So I've only been in this weight class for like 9 months now, I think. So I'm still really new to it. But basically, I was in the 63s before, and that was just like way too light for me. So when I stopped being in such a severe deficit, my body weight just shot up to 70. When I was like, I wasn't sitting at 63 though, I was sitting at maybe like 68, 69, and like all of a sudden I put on like a couple of kilos, like in the blink of an eye. Um, and I was like, well, I guess like I feel strong, so I guess
Kind
my
of getting
69
10
now.
kgs away
Yeah,
almost,
like
if you
all of
put
a
on
sudden
more.
I'd been struggling with like 95 kilo benches, and then all of a sudden I was benching like 110. I was like, well, I'm not going to go down. So uh, yeah, like ideally you want to sit just a little. It depends obviously on your level, but like if you're very competitive and at a high level and you can afford to cut, um, ideally you want to sit like just over your weight class and then manipulate your weight to help you make weight on the day so that you're able to have more mass on the platform. So like I could diet down to 69 if I wanted to and like lose a kilo and a half or whatever, but then I would lose that mass. So like if I can stay at like 71 and then like water load, I didn't even need to water cut last time. I only had to water load, and it's manipulated my weight. Like I'm able to hold on to the mass that I've got, and it gives me an advantage on the platform.
And that's that whole idea of mass moves mass, right? It's
Yeah.
pretty simple equation. And for people who don't know what a water cut is, it's quite a interesting kind of thing to do. How would you describe a water cut? Obviously they're different, but what are the fundamentals of doing a water cut?
So fundamentals are usually loading your water intake. It depends how much water you usually have and like how much body weight, like how heavy you are as well. But like for me, I like gradually built it up. Like a week before comp, I'll start like gradually building it up, and then I think it's like 3 days before. I've got it all in a spreadsheet, and I just follow that like a
Yeah.
book. But off the top of my head, it's like 3 days before I'm on 7.5 liters of water a day. Um, and then you I didn't even need to cut it off this time, but usually you'd cut it off like maybe 14, 16 hours before weigh-in. And basically because you've been loading that water and it's been making you pee, when you stop, you're still peeing, but you're not putting the water in.
Yeah.
So it helps you like flush out a lot of water weight that way as well.
Yeah. Do you manipulate any sodium throughout that week?
I have done. I didn't do it last time because I didn't need to, but I have done that. So again, you don't always have to, but like I've always like loaded it and then dropped it, like closer to comp. So you like load your water, load your sodium, and then like drop them. Uh, and then also fiber intake. If you drop, like if you, it sounds unhealthy, but it is only for a few days. You cut out your fruit and vegetable intake and like watch how much more fibrous food you're having. You can lose up to like a kilo doing that as well because you have like a kilo of fiber in your gut.
Man, that's so. interesting how much you can just manipulate your body
Yeah.
composition like that. And would you say that that has a dramatic impact on, well, it mustn't have a dramatic impact, but would you say that impacts your performance? Like, is it better to not have to do that? Would you perform better? Or no, because you're able to bring more mass to the platform, like you're saying?
It's totally depends. But last time I felt the best I ever have on the platform because I cut less water, like I didn't have to. Usually cramping's an issue for me, and like especially in my forearms. Like they would cramp and my hand would literally like be like clamped shut like this, and my coach would have to peel it open and like bend my wrist back.
Is it a
Um,
sodium thing? Like, do you take any salt pills or something for that?
yeah, so I'd like rehydrate properly, and I've got salt, I've got Diorolite, I've got electrolytes, but nothing was seeming to work. But I think it's like a very fine line with me, like from what weight I do my water load and my water cut from. Like last time I only cramped once, and I took a little. It's called Cramp Fix. It's like an electrolyte drink that tastes like vinegar, but
Um,
it works. And I took it away, and it was fine. Whereas before, like I would cramp multiple times when I'm competing, but now I realise it is water load related because I've taken that variation out now. I've like lost way less water. I've not had to cut the water and I didn't cramp. So
and you can see how you going through those experiences, all of a sudden you have a wealth of knowledge when it comes to being a coach in
yeah,
terms of your water loading, your sodium manipulation, because you've gone and you've done the thing and experienced the negative impacts of doing it a certain way.
yeah. Thankfully I've not had to do like sauna or anything like that, but I've supervised friends that have had to do it. And it is
It's
pretty
pretty
brutal.
extreme. It's
Yeah.
just, it reminds me of stepping onto a bodybuilding stage and they're
Mm,
trying to get as, like, as dry as they can. So
yeah.
then they do something like that. I didn't actually know until I started looking into the world of powerlifting a bit more that there was actually like the nutrition and stuff in terms of a peak week is actually quite a thing for a lot of the athletes.
Yeah. It's like as there's a lot more to it than what a lot of people think.
Mm. And I can see even from our chat in terms of you being a coach, it's obvious that you must be a good coach given the holistic approach that you take. Like a big green flag that I would say for people in terms of looking for a coach is that you're not just tunnel vision on only the training or only
Yeah.
the food, and you don't have, any leeway for a human being a human.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, there's this an ideal that you could aim for, but it's more about like what are the consistent things that you can do over time to stack the wins and stack the progress.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, I think a huge part of it for me is like if one of my lifters is struggling with something or is just mentally like, even if it's not to do with training, if they're just mentally not in a good place, I'm like, tell me. Like, I'm not going to tell anyone. I'm not going to pry and ask for details. But if you want to talk to me about something, I'll talk to you about it because it all has an impact on your training and like. I think it's really important. It's not just a physical stick to program thing. It's like how's your mind?
Absolutely. And especially if you're coaching them and they're not meeting the targets that you've set for them, you start to maybe think that it's you. But
Yeah,
then if they're not opening up about the things that they're going through, then it's
yeah,
hard for you to know what to manipulate and what to change
exactly.
in order to make that progress that they should be making.
Yeah, and part of it's like as a coach you should be asking questions, but at the same time, like your athlete needs to communicate back to you. Like sometimes like well, quite often I've had to say to someone like, how are your externals at the moment? Like how are you sleeping? How's your stress levels? How's this? How's that? And sometimes they're like, oh well actually I've got a bit of stuff going on and I'm like, okay, there we go.
Yeah, it is a two-way relationship because as an athlete, it's easy to assume that your coach just knows everything, and if it's
Yeah.
going bad, oh, it must be my coach's fault. But if you're not, like you say, taking that ownership as an athlete to effectively communicate,
Yeah.
then your coach isn't going to know what to change.
That's it. Like I said, a coach should be asking questions, but at the same time, like as an athlete, to be a better athlete, you need to be communicating really closely and openly with your coach. Like my coach gets like all of my info. I don't tell him like unnecessary things, but like if something was going on, I'd tell him. I'd be like, look, like this is going on. My training might be a bit funny over the next however long.
Mm.
And likewise, when I'm feeling really good, I'll let them know because it's all training data that you can use.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of what you've got coming up, what does your sort of schedule or your year ahead look like from here?
So basically, the GB team is going to be having a new head coach anytime now. I think the process is ongoing. Nobody knows who it's going to be. So I don't know if those processes of selection are going to change or if it's going to keep the same. Um, but I really hope that I'll be selected for the GB squad for European champs at the end of the year, which is in Estonia this year. Um, I'm pretty sure, unless I've got that wrong, I'm sure it's there. But yeah, like I really hope that I'm selected for that. And if I am, then I'll be continuing to do this volume block for like quite a while because I've got like 22 weeks until Euros.
That's like
If
right
like
at the end of the year then.
yeah, if selected, it's like 21, 22 weeks. So um, yeah, I've got like a decent amount of time with this volume block before I would need to start prepping. Like I'll probably take a 10-week prep. But like I've not spoken about that with my coach yet.
Yeah, maybe your coach will listen to this and then hit you up afterwards.
Maybe he'll be like, "You've got it wrong.
Yeah,
You're not doing
it's
that."
absolutely wrong.
Yeah.
And if people want to find you to either follow your journey or if they want to reach out to you, coaching inquiries, where is the best place for people to find you?
Instagram's probably the best place. I'm quite active on there, so my Instagram you can just type in Annie Nelson, and then like my underscore is like Annie Banani underscore, so it's the nickname I got when I was a little
Nice.
girl, and it's like and then my coaching page is in my bio on there.
And would you just recommend them to flick you a DM or something if they're
Yeah,
interested in coaching?
just DM me, or in my coaching page I've also got like in the website section there's a link to a Google Doc where if you don't feel comfortable enough DMing me, then you can fill out the contact form and I'll reach out to you.
Perfect. Thanks heaps for coming on today, Annie. I feel like I personally learnt a lot about the world of powerlifting, both from a coaching perspective and also from your athlete perspective. So I really appreciate your time.
No, good. Thank you very much for having me.